Good day, folks. Everything new under the sun. Now, this has kind of been the big news last couple of days, especially amongst amateur radio folk and anybody who watches the sun, BP Earthwatch, for example. And there was a cannibal blast. Now, this is a coronal mass ejection that comes out and overtakes another ejection, and that's what they call it, a cannibal. But Earth hit by powerful X1 solar flare after fears of cannibal blast. The Earth narrowly avoided being hit by a cannibal solar flare, but has been lashed by a powerful enough blast to disrupt communications. And so this, the first thing you take away from this is that you need to have communications in place, because communications could go down at any time, whether it's from a nuclear EMP, high altitude EMP, such as like the one that is spoken of in the video on the community page. And you also need to have it protected from such a thing, to prevent it being, your radios, your communication being destroyed in the event of that happening. So all that being said, is that the sun is, I think, going to be used by God. The first destruction was the flood of Noah, and God sent the rainbow, the multicolored rainbow. It was not for pride. It came because God destroyed all the inhabitants of the earth except for Noah's family because of pride. So that's interesting. But God said he would not destroy the planet with water again. And so he will keep his promise. The next time it's going to be destroyed by fire. And where do I get that? Well, there are verses that certainly back this up. The sun blasts out highest energy radiation ever recorded, raising questions for solar physics. So there's things we don't know about the sun. In a record-breaking discovery, scientists detected our very own sun emitting an extraordinary amount of gamma rays, wavelengths of light known to carry the most energy. Now, wouldn't it be interesting if we had solar panels which took in gamma rays and converted that to electricity? That would be very interesting indeed. And so there's lots of stuff we don't know about the sun, and that's fascinating in and of itself. It says that they're realizing that, maybe God knows more than we do. The sun is more surprising than we knew, said Nisa. There is a lot these folks don't know, and it's silly and even stupid to think that we know anything at all, really. We know so little, and we got to give it to God, and we got to recognize that God is all-powerful. He controls all things, and we got to realize we're just humans. We don't know what's going on. So how God is going to use the sun in the last days, we don't know, but certainly it says that men are scorched with great heat. Speaking about the gamma rays, these rays can't hurt us, but they can have a pretty important ripple effect on the future of solar physics. And that's the key. We don't know, could the Lord use this in some manner? Is there some understanding of physics and gamma rays and solar activity that we don't understand, that God is going to bring out in the last days? It says in Revelation chapter 16, verse 9, and also in Revelation chapter 6, which deals with the force of the apocalypse, but 16 verse 9 says, "And men were scorched with a great heat." And, of course, what do they do when they're scorched with a great heat? Do they turn to God? No, they don't. They blaspheme the name of God, which hath power over these plagues. And they repented not to give him glory. These men, they never want to give him the glory. They think they know everything, and then they realize, it's more surprising than we knew. They're continually humbled, but again, do they humble themselves in front of God? No, they don't. And this is chapter 16, and it relates to the vials being poured out, and this is directly during the wrath of God. So if we go to the seals, these are images of the seals on the bottom. Deception, war, famine, pestilence, those are the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and then we get into the Great Tribulation, which is the wrath of God. Well, once you drop into the Great Tribulation, number 5 there, that's really kind of the precursor to the great tribulation, and it's speaking about the great tribulation there, but the actual trumpets and vials start in a couple of verses there, and so that's what we're talking about, the vials or the bowls, and when men were scorched with great heat, well, that's coming from the vial judgment or the bowl judgments. Men were scorched with great heat, and that's from the fourth angel pouring out his vial upon the sun. And power was given unto him, or the Son, to scorch men with fire. Is fire going to be used in the last days? Absolutely. And God is going to bring wrath upon the earth to bring justice to the earth, to deal with all the sinful people on the earth, and it's going to burn. That's exactly what's going to happen. Now, Revelation chapter 6. Revelation chapter 6, and here is where we start getting into kind of the opening scenes and the wrath of God to come. So at the top of chapter 6, it goes through the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Let's see, the white horse, the red horse, the pale horse. It talks about all those, the famine, pestilence, war, and such there. And if you go down, scroll down further, we get to verse 12. And I beheld I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. So this is kind of the opening scene to the wrath of God. These are the curtains on the stage opening now. The sun became black as sackcloth. This is the time, the milestone where things start to head towards the wrath of God. And the stars fell unto the earth. It says, and the heavens departed as a scroll. Again, like curtains on a stage. And the wrath of God is coming as the curtains open. And the current kings of the earth and the great men and the chief captains, every bondman, every free man hid themselves in the dens and the rocks of the mountains. At this point, they're not repenting. They're not going to repent, but they do recognize something is happening. They said, fall on us, hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne. So they recognize God at this point, but will they repent? No. Verse 17, for the great day of wrath. So this is the great tribulation. This is when the wrath of God falls. Remember, up above, when the four horsemen of the apocalypse ride, verses 1 to 6, this is not the great tribulation. This is not the wrath of God. You got to get down to verse 17 to get to the wrath of God. And so that's why I say we may be here for the seals, for the four horsemen of the apocalypse, in part to be a witness for God, but times are going to be very hard. I'm going to talk about shortly, in some ways in which those will be very, very hard for Christians, because you're going to be a hater, you're going to be a bigot, you're going to be saying a wrong speak, you're going to be doing things that the government doesn't like, right? So let's go to this article here. And this relates to banking. So the economy. They're going to shut you out of the economy. And I've said this before. The government at some point will say, you know what, you can't say you are against LGBTQ. That is hate speech. And you're not going to allowed to have a bank account. What did they do during the trucker convoy, which was a mostly peaceful convoy to Ottawa, which the police had the ability to deal with and manage? What did they do as the emergency orders were declared by Prime Minister Trudeau? Well, they started freezing bank accounts. They caused people not to be able to eat or pay their mortgages or pay, the interest payments on their 18-wheel trucks, or not be able to use their Interact card at machines in Ottawa to buy lunch for themselves. And anybody who was related got their bank accounts frozen. The government will freeze your bank account and start closing. That's what they're doing in the UK. UK banks are closing more than 1,000 accounts a day with little explanation. And so it goes. This was about politics. If you're on the right, side of politics, not on the left, if you're, say, a Republican, this is what they're doing in the UK. I was going to say Ukraine, but in the UK, they're starting to close bank accounts. Nearly 100,000 bank accounts marked for belonging to politically exposed persons. So just expose. You're not being extreme. You're not breaking the law. You're just someone who, activists may not like, and the banks don't want you to have a bank account because they don't want activists on their doorstep causing bad publicity. So they close your account. This is what they did to Nigel Farage. So again, if you are conservative, you will be targeted. Your bank account will be shut off. You will be removed from, you will lose the option to participate in the economy. And how many of us need a bank account? We need a bank account for everything these days, to pay for gas, to pay the lease on our vehicle, to pay for our mortgage. If you don't have a bank account, you foreclose. You lose all those items. You have no way, you literally have no way to live other than sleeping under a bridge, with a stolen tent or something, like people do in cities. You literally, that is all you can do. You can't have a cell phone because you need a credit card, right, to pay for the cell phone. So they're going to get you. Here's another reason why Christians are going to have a hard time in the last days. World Bank halts new loans to Uganda over the you-know-what law, that bigoted law that Uganda is putting. Now, I'm not saying I'm not for or against Uganda putting in a law for this, but what I am saying is if the government decides that you are a criminal, you will not have a bank account. You will not be able to do business. You will lose a lot of money. You will probably lose your family, your kids. You will lose everything. You will not be able to support anybody, that's for sure. And ultimately, they may simply put you in jail for saying things that the government doesn't like. Here's what they're doing in China. China bans negative economic commentary. So if you mention deflation, if you mention economic collapse in China, well, they don't like that. They don't want you to write news stories about that because it upsets the populace, the civilians who are otherwise living fat, dumb, and happy. Right? They don't want to rile up the masses against the government because then the government has to squash that with lots of police and heavy military. They don't want to do that. They want to keep the civilians and the population compliant. They want them to keep going on with their lives, fat, dumb, and happy, playing video games and eating lots of food and going to movies and all these sorts of things. All these amusement things. Amuse means to not think. Go look up the definition of amuse. Amuse. It means to not think, and that's what the Chinese want. The civilians doing. They don't want them to think or to rise up against the communist government. And so you go to jail. And this will happen in Western nations. It's happening now. It's happened on YouTube for the last, 4 years now since COVID? They silence us because we say the wrong things. We don't follow the narrative. We say we cause an uproar amongst the people. And they don't like that. So for Christians, folks, times will get hard. So hard that most Christians, or most... I'll put it this way. A lot of people are going to fall away from the faith because they need a bank account. They need a cell phone. They need to support their kids and or their elderly, or they need to put food on their table, and they will do what the government says to keep their bank accounts open. It's going to be very hard, folks. I'm not going to lie. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to be very, very hard. You're going to have to make some tough decisions as we head into these last days, and as the Antichrist starts to rule for the last 7 years. And you will go to jail. You will have everything taken away from you, except for your soul, except for your eternity and your salvation with Jesus Christ. So I'll leave there, guys. It's a sobering thing, and again, the question is, how is God going to use the Son in the last days? I think it could get very, very interesting. And Revelation chapter 16 and Revelation chapter 6 speaks of that. And so the Son is going to come out. We're going to learn a lot of new things about it. So be prepared, folks. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.